Hey guys, this is John Hopkins, pastor at Relentless Church in Norfolk, Virginia, and I'm coming to you about small church worship. All things small church worship. You know, it's not the same as producing worship in a large church. We that are serving in smaller churches have to improvise and do things a little differently. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Just a little background. I've been in ministry for 30 years. And most of it has been leading small church worship. Now, I've also served a few large churches, and so I understand the difference between the two. But we're going to talk about small church worship, things that will help you each and every week in your ministry so that you can move forward, because I believe that folks in a small church deserve the same worship opportunities as those in large churches. So today we're going to talk about recruiting. How to get musicians, instrumentalists and singers to work and to come and to help you lead worship in your church. You know, if you're in a huge church, 2,000-3,000, it's real easy to come up with musicians because they're just there. But for a small church with a limited budget, it's very difficult to come up with local musicians. So we're going to look at some ideas that I've used in the past that might help you to recruit the musicians that you need. First, I want to encourage you to look within your church. You think, well, there's nobody here. You never know. And I will say this right up front. Making announcements about anybody wanting to be in the praise team from the pulpit typically does not work. I've done this for years, made announcements, come sing in the choir, come be in the praise team, and nobody ever comes. You need to get out there and individually talk to people. Individually ask them, hey, you have any music background? You ever played any instrument? You ever sang in a choir or anything like that? You ever had any desire to? One way or the other, you need to ask folks and get the feel for where they are. You never know when someone has a clarinet in their closet that they played 20 years ago, but it would be more than happy to get it back out and try to learn how to play and get those musical chops back. The other thing is you got people that have been turned down and have had a bad experience in worship. So you need to encourage them. You just never know who's sitting in your congregation. But the chances really are that you don't have a lot. If you have a small congregation, you probably have a small pool of musicians that are willing to serve. If you're a big church, you don't have to worry about that. You have dozens of musicians and everybody wants to be part of it. But in a small church, you have to sometimes go outside your church to find the musicians that you need. And we're going to talk about a few of those. First of all, don't hesitate to advertise for the musicians that you need. I keep a list advertisement on Craigslist all the time. When it runs out, I put a new one on. I change it up from time to time, but I'm constantly looking for new musicians, for additional musicians, constantly looking. The thing you have to keep in mind is you might not get a bass, drum, and guitar. You might get a flute player. You might get a sax player. Well, figure out how to use them. Work them in. I've got one gentleman that's in our praise team right now that I heard he played clarinet when he was in high school. And Keith's in his 60s now. So I asked him, he said, sure, I'll come try it out. Well, he went from playing clarinet to I invited him to sing in our choir. I found out he could sing tenor and we needed a tenor. And he is now several years later still with me, playing and leading in the praise team, singing lead vocals and playing an electronic instrument that he can get sounds of any sort out of. So you never know when that musician you can find if you start looking. Don't worry about if they don't play just what you're looking for. Figure out how to work them in. Another place that I go is to local music stores or local pawn shops. Yeah, I go to pawn shops because they have great equipment at a very cheap price. They're just trying to move merchandise. But you go in there, and if you just walk around and listen, you never know. When you hear somebody trying out a bass or trying out a keyboard or trying out a guitar, and you strike up a conversation and ask them if they play with anybody, if they're out there playing, and would they maybe like to come play at your church. One day I was at a pawn shop. This has been 22 years ago now. It was back in 2000. And I was walking around and I heard this young fella just playing lead guitar, just really, really, really good. And so I went up to him and I asked him, "Do you play with a band? If you do, I'd love to be able to come out and hear you play." And he says, "No, I don't. What I want to do is play in church." Wow. And back in those days, we were one of the only churches doing contemporary music. And so I invited him to come out and recruited him. And Thomas played guitar for our band for several years. So go in, strike up conversations, ask. You recruit, talk to people, just like you would if you were sharing the gospel. Share the need for worship with people. The next place that I would look at is the local schools. Don't hesitate to look at the high school or even middle school, because there's some very talented middle school players. If there's a local university in your area, go meet the directors. Go to a local high school, meet the band director, meet the choir director, and ask them, "Do you have anybody in your group that would like to come and play or be part of a Christian band?" And you never know, they might have some kid that's sitting there, very talented, just no opportunity, and would jump at the opportunity to come participate in your praise group. The other place that I tell you, don't hesitate. Do this regardless, is make friends with the large church worship pastor. Find the largest churches in your area and go meet their worship pastor. Develop a relationship. Take them out to lunch, because you never know where they've got so many musicians, and they may have a rotation, and so may be a good guitar player, but not good enough to make it into their rotation. Or so may be a great singer, but not good enough really to sing in their groups. So these are people that need opportunities and are looking for opportunities. So ask them, "Well, could I borrow them?" Yeah, I say borrow. Look for over, say, a 6-month period to help us get going. I don't want to steal people from your church. That's not the goal. But if you have somebody, maybe we could borrow them to get our worship team up and running. So don't hesitate to talk to those kind of people, because you never know when they would be able to help you out. So here are some ideas for you that you can look at and start tomorrow recruiting the musicians. Now, there's nothing wrong with using canned music, as it used to be called. If you only have one singer, well, use some background tracks and get them going. But I think the sooner you can get live music up on your platform, the better off you'll be. The more live up front, the more live will be in the congregation. When they see people leading worship and actually worshiping on stage, it will encourage them to worship and get involved as well. So always be looking, always look for avenues to find those people. Use what you've got, and we will be in future weeks, we will be looking at some technology that can help you in the meantime, things that will help you even if you have a full band, where for small church worship you can utilize some things that will help you. You go to a large church and they've got 7 computers back there and a full team of tech work. Well, we can't do that in a small church, but there are things that I can show you that will help greatly. So look forward to that in future weeks. Now, let me encourage you, if you would, to subscribe and to like and turn on your notifications so you won't miss any future teachings. Again, I thank you, and if you would, be blessed and be relentless.